The Sandy and Toddcast is a Mindgarden Media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions.
Broadcasting from two very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day. All while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
And welcome back to the Sandy and Toddcast. It's another episode of Season 3, Episode 6. She is Sandy.
Season 3? We're doing
Season 13, Episode 6. She is Sandy.
He is Todd.
And here we are. So we just had an election, and it turned out the way it turned out, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And I want us both to, because we both feel the same, but we both feel the same differently.
Yeah.
We're both confused and amazed that it turned out the way it did. And yet there's a big part of me that is not amazed because we went through the same thing in 2016.
Yep.
And for those people who are like us, and they're open-minded and they try their best to be kind and they support everyone as much as possible.
Right.
It's hard to imagine that we live in a country with so many people who just don't give a shit about anybody else.
Right.
And that's difficult for me.
It's incredibly difficult.
I work in the media, and I work for a company that they don't like using this term, but I'll use it. It's pretty progressive. It's not your typical news talk network of right-wing bullshit or left-wing bullshit for that matter. And we were just all blown away by this.
I knew it was going to be close.
I did too.
I know that there are people out there like the ones that showed themselves this week. However, I wasn't expecting the people who voted for him to be the ones that voted for him. On some levels.
Well, here's the thing. He got about the same amount of votes he got last time. Nothing's new there.
Right. Exactly.
But what is new is that those who typically support the other side didn't show up.
Exactly.
Or they may have voted another way.
Right.
I'm upset. Obviously, I have people in my life who are upset.
Yes.
But I took the time between 2016 and 2024 to weed those people out of my life. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't get along with you.
Right.
Doesn't mean that I can't work with you.
Mm-hmm.
Although, again, I'm lucky I don't work with people like that.
Right.
But,
I'm glad I work at home.
Right.
And I don't have to deal with that shit.
But I won't put up with it. And my mindset has been the mindset that I think a lot of people who did not vote for Donald Trump, and that is, we can disagree on policy, but we're not going to disagree on human rights. And
basic human rights.
Right.
The right to exist, the right to be who you are, the right to a better life, the right to not have to worry about fucking egg prices and worry more about your fellow human being. That's the rights that I think we should all be concerned about.
What's going to be really funny is when people realize that it had nothing to do with the government. It had everything to do with corporations.
Exactly.
And how they could scam us after COVID. So here's what I'm doing. However, I actually had somebody on the right say to me, well, just focus on what you can do. And that's what I'm going to do. So the world is going to do what the world's going to do. But I'm going to, in my life, help people, assist people, tell people stories.
Yep.
And come up with ways that I can make a difference in people's lives, especially those who are being or will be marginalized during this time. Because truly, that's all I can do. I'm sad. Although I've always been me, right? I've always been a person who believed in the speaks and the speakage and the verbiage of Fred Rogers.
Yeah.
And I miss that mark every day by a long shot.
Uh-huh.
But I'm still going to live my life that way.
Yes.
And the people in my life who I thought were decent people, who are just not.
Yep.
I can't change them. So they're not worth my time.
That's right.
I can still converse with them when it comes to work things and all that, but I do not have to put any further energy into that. And tell you a real quick story. A part of my job is producing a morning show, and the morning show features two guys in their 60s, two white guys in their 60s, who one of them lived whether he wants to believe it or not, a very privileged life. He had a pony when he was growing up. And another guy who was raised a little bit more like me, middle class type upbringing. And after the election, they were both surprised at how upset some people were. And they tried to not attribute it, but link it to the same kind of feeling that people feel after the loss of a Super Bowl for their favorite team. And I don't usually interject much about my personal life or my personal feelings. I kind of just let them go and make fun of them and giggle and look up various things that they're not talking correctly about. But I stepped in this week. And I said, guys, people aren't upset because their team didn't win in this case. People are upset because for the next 4 years, they've heard what is probably coming down the line, and they're concerned about that. Both of these men had daughters who called them up crying about the election results. And one of them said, but you have to find the good things. Which sounds like a really good piece of advice, to be honest. I mean, Mr. Rogers used to say, look for the helpers. Whenever there's a disaster, look for the helpers. And I think we need to do that now. But his equation was, look, Donald Trump doesn't drink. That's a good thing. And it's like, that doesn't help. That doesn't help women and marginalized people in our society.
Right.
That does nothing for me. I don't care if the guy, is a raging alcoholic, if he's a decent person and whatever. Right. So what I'm doing is what I can do. And part of that is looking for the people who are the helpers, who are the ones who are fighting harder than I could ever fight for the marginalized in our lives, and supporting those people the best I can. My sisters are like-minded with me. We are banding together to get through this, and I refuse to watch social media stuff that is going to trigger me. I'm just not going to do it.
No.
I spent all day yesterday watching old Johnny Carson clips. All fucking day. You know whose face I didn't see? Cheeto. I didn't see his face once. Right. That's how I'm going to live my life. When the news comes on, I work at a news company. When the news comes on and I hear his voice start, it's being turned off.
It's funny you say that because Dave and I, months ago, made this little pact and we said, we're done with the news. If he wins, we're done with the news. Because we're not putting ourselves in that path of destruction, our own mental, emotional well-being destruction, because we went through enough the 4 years that he was in there before, and the months leading up to the 2020 election, and the months after the 2020 election, and the pandemic. We went through enough with that bullshit.
Yeah.
And it's even worse now. You think it was bad then? It's even worse now. You know, I edit and produce podcasts for a living, and I sent you and Dave a podcast that I did the other day that isn't out yet. But it's a company, a firm, an investment management firm in the Midwest, and they do podcasts about the state of the economy. And as I was working yesterday, sometimes I work on the weekends, as I was working yesterday and I was editing their podcast, the entire 20-minute podcast made so much sense to me and was actually a little bit comforting in knowing that I'm not insane, that maybe the rest of the world is insane. Because essentially what they said and what they've been saying all along, and what every other economic podcast I edit says, is that the economy is doing great.
Yep.
The economy is really doing fantastic. You know, we went shopping because everybody knows how much I love Halloween. We went shopping a couple weekends ago in Syracuse. And there was, you know, everybody knows how much shopping there is in Syracuse. And I wanted to go to a couple of stores, a Home Goods, Marshall's, TJ Maxx, to see what their Halloween clearance was. And we were in this one shopping area, little shopping center, and there was a line a half a mile long just to turn into the shopping center. And Dave dropped me off so I could go in and shop, and went and parked a half a mile away and said, call me when you're done, because there were no available parking spaces, Todd. And I'm talking, not the wealthy people were there. These are people from all walks of life eating crumble cookies and shopping at Home Goods.
Yep.
And shopping all over the place and spending their money. We do not have a bad economy. You want to see a bad economy? Give it about 3 or 4 months after he gets into office. Give it a few months, because guess what? Those tariffs are not being paid for by a government. Those tariffs are being paid for by us. So your prices are going to go up about 40%. Dave and I have already been talking about buying perishable goods now, so that when this happens, and it will happen, when this happens, we're not so bad off.
Well,
and so this is the shit that angers me, because people who do not take the time to make themselves educated about how the economy works are the ones who cause this. And I'm not even talking about our innate human rights that have been compromised now. Our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, our brothers, our sisters, our uncles, our aunts. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about the price of gas and eggs. That's what we're talking about. And I am fucking upset and pissed about the way this country has turned out in this election. You don't have to love the Democrats, but you sure as hell better realize that the Democrats had your interest in mind and not the Republicans. Done. Sorry. Oh my God.
Whee!
Todd. Sorry, everybody. I had to say it. It's been building up in me all week long. I had to say it. And I agree with you, Todd. I have stayed off social media except for my pages that I go to for different things. I do not scroll anymore. I am done with it. I am not going to let myself be triggered by these people anymore. I just am not going to do it. All right.
I understand when things are expensive, it makes life tough. But it's more than just your egg price and your gas price, which, by the way, gas prices are really in line.
Actually, our gas prices are really good right now. I'm just saying.
And that did not happen because Donald Trump became president.
Right.
But what we need to do is we as the average person in America need to look at the CEOs of companies who are making billions of dollars and companies that are they're padding their wallets during this time. They took the pandemic and said, "Oh, well, prices have to go up because supplies are down," but that never came back. Nobody ever said, "Okay, now we can drop our prices."
Right.
And the minimum wage hasn't changed. And people can say, "Well, those are supposed to be entry jobs." Unemployment is so low. Again, another sign of a thriving economy. That there's not enough people to take the jobs.
Exactly.
And most people, now when I grew up, for a good portion of my life, my dad worked, my mom did not. And then at some point, my mom did get a job and she worked various jobs throughout her life. But my parents, who I considered very middle class,
right,
were able to save money, were able to buy a home and some land and get a new car when they wanted to get a new car and buy clothes when they wanted to buy clothes. Maybe not early in their relationship, but certainly by the time I was, a teenager or younger than that, things were fine. It is difficult to buy a home. Not only is it difficult to have the money to do it, but to have the credit to do it.
Right.
And many people now, there's no one income families anymore. Most people have a gig and at least one side hustle, maybe 2 jobs, because you need it in order to get through life. So when these 2 guys were saying that basically the loss was just another game being played, and you got to get over it like you have to get over the Super Bowl, I was floored.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to stop that conversation and explain why people were ticked off. And luckily, our listeners came to my defense and were texting in basically saying, "I can't believe you guys are saying this. Todd, you're spot on, blah, blah, blah." And it doesn't matter. If somebody wants to be upset about something, you're allowed to be upset about something. So I would, the best you can do, I think, for yourself right now is not think about the people who voted against you or against your ideals or against your belief system. But yet, better yet, find the people who are like you and surround yourself with those people. Now, some people say, "Well, that puts you in a silo. You're not seeing other things." I see that and I agree with that. But in this case, there is nothing on that other side right now that I want to deal with. I grew up in a house that was never Democrat or Republican. Voted for the best candidate. My dad was probably a little bit more Republican. My mom was probably a little bit more Democrat. But I voted for Republicans before because they were the best choice for our country.
Mm-hmm. So as have I.
Right.
As have I.
So I don't feel that I'm somebody who silos myself. However, excuse me, for the benefit of my health and my spirit and my mind and to do good in this country, we need more helpers now. We need more people who are going to dig in and help others around us because they're all out there. The homeless is out there. Homeless veterans are out there. Hungry families are out there. There are people who are elderly people just getting by who can't pay for food because they need treatment for cancer or dementia.
Right.
Our country's not going to do that. Those people who voted the other way are not going to do that. They're worried about their F-150, the price of their F-150 and the gas going into it and the eggs. Okay.
Right. Yep. exactly.
So if you are a like-minded person and you care about more than just yourself, I urge you to dig into that, to find little ways to do that, whether that is this holiday season, donating a little something to an organization that may be underfunded or may be built around marginalized people. I know you're doing some stuff very personal in your life right now, helping out some young people. That's what you can do.
That's right.
And it's not going to change the election. And it's not going to change the millions of people that voted for that ass wipe. Okay? It's not. But what it will do is it will help that family, or it will help that individual, or it will help that community. And if we have enough people who just say, you know what? There are people who are going to fight really hard for us in our political system. And
that's right.
Right?
That's right.
Support them too.
It's important to realize that there are people who aren't going to give up.
Right. And I'm not going to give up.
Me either.
But there's only so much I can do. I can't put myself out there for the kind of abuse that would be needed in order to fight Donald Trump and the MAGAs.
You know, it's self-preservation. You know, it's something I'm working. Now, you guys just heard how angry I am. And I am angry. I am angry. And especially as an empath, I am devastated and angry. And I have to work through that. It's sort of like the grieving process after someone you love passes away. There's still steps because we all hope, and then it's just taken away. You know, it's just gone. So I want to make sure everybody understands it's okay to be angry and it's okay to be devastated. But it is a lot like the grieving process. Will be okay. But you have to let yourself go through the steps. You know, your sister Vicky posted something on her page that I absolutely loved. It said, whoever's an empath right now is exhausted, tired, can't sleep, chest hurts, stomach is heavy, sad and mad all at once. Social media is tough because it helps us heal others, but it wears us down. Just know that you are seen, you are felt. Take a break, please. And that hit hard. That hit hard because that's exactly how I feel. And I won't feel like this forever. Eventually, just like most of us, you pick yourself up and you start to become resigned to the fact that you can make a difference. Like you said, Todd, you can make a difference. Even if it's not for the whole country, you can make a difference in someone's life. You know, I was born in 1971. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in a world where if I had to make a decision about myself, my body, my life, I was afforded that right. That no one was ever going. I was privileged enough to never have to worry about that. If I was 16 and found myself pregnant, I could make a decision. I'm not saying I would do one thing or the other, but I had that choice to make. If I was 25 and pregnant with a child and my life was in danger, if I gave birth to that child, I had the privilege of making the decision of how I wanted the outcome to be and what I had to do. And I looked it up the other day, Todd, and it wasn't until I remember my grandmother telling me something about this when I was a child. It wasn't until I was 3 years old in 1974 that women were allowed to open their own bank accounts, that they were able to open up credit cards in their names. 1974 was the year that women were allowed to do the basic things that we take for granted today. Now, let's imagine that that right was taken away from us. Let's imagine that we weren't able to open up a credit card in our name. Let's imagine that we weren't able to decide for ourselves if we're going to buy a house or we're going to open up a bank account in our name. Let's just imagine that. Because that is a possibility. If they can take away our right, our reproductive rights, they can take away anything that they want. And if you think that's some kind of like crazy thought, think again, because it's not. We're moving backwards. And that's what bothers me, I think, the most, is that people have a right to their own lives. And it really, really scares me that these children today could live in a world where they don't have the same rights and privileges that I enjoyed growing up. And at 50, almost 54 years old, it terrifies me. Not for me, because my life is on the other side. But it terrifies me for these children who are growing up and may not be able to have the same rights that I had. And didn't even have them, wouldn't have even had them if I had been born a few years earlier. And it scares the living hell out of me. And that's why I'm angry. But you know what? We'll all get through it. Because we're all going to stand together. And we're all going to believe that the power of all of us can do good things. And if it means going to a bagel shop and buying someone breakfast who may need breakfast, that's what it's going to take, to your point. And we're all going to do it together.
And here's, listen, people have all sorts of religious beliefs. Some people are religious in the traditional terms of Catholicism and all that. And some are spiritual, blah, blah, blah. Listen, for those who believe that there's some sort of religious thing with Donald Trump, get yourself some help. Because I guarantee you one thing, whatever God or energy you decide that you want to align yourself with, if you think that energy's going to give a shit about who was president in the United States and whether or not that was important in the world, you're going to be judged on yourself. What did you do during your life to make a difference in someone else's life?
That's right.
In the world's life? In nature's life? That's what you're going to be judged on. You're not going to be judged on whether or not women were the right for abortions or was taken away, that was saved because it's against the law. That doesn't do anything for you, my friend. In your religion, that might be the right thing, but I can guarantee you the larger energy is just not going to give a shit. They're going to look directly at you and ask about who you are as a human. What did you do while you were here with your time? And if you believe in heaven or hell, that may determine where you go. And if you believe in reincarnation or other energy movement, could make you replay all this again in another life. Right. So, in all actuality, it doesn't matter who's there. Now, Hitler was a bad guy, but there were still people in Germany who took care of others, who helped the folks who were going through a really rough time there, whether you want to talk about Jews or anybody else that was put down because of him. And the wars, of course, that he caused. So, listen, our history is full of this in this world, and this will not be the last time something like this happens. It's just not. This will happen again in this country in another 200 years or whatever it will be, 40 years, 80 years, who knows? All you can do is control the energy you put out, the light that you provide others.
That's right.
So, as Sandy said, it's okay to be angry. And we are in sad, dark times. but step up, make a difference. Know who you're doing business with. I will say that.
Oh, yes.
Know who you're doing business with.
Yes.
Support the businesses that support light and kindness and all that. Those that support the other stuff, find somebody else.
Plenty of choices.
Yep.
Plenty of choices.
I used to say to myself, I think if you put a election banner on your front lawn as a business, how dare you? I loved it because I went through.
Shine that light. Shine that light.
I loved it because, okay, I'm not going to work with them anymore. Oh, they've plumbed out my house before when I had a clogged toilet. Not using them.
Nope.
I did that. When I was driving and I saw that on businesses, mental note, ain't going to be working with those folks.
As have we, because I'll tell you what, Todd, at the core, at the bottom level of it, at the core level of the business mentality, and I studied business in college, at the basic level, business people should always shut their mouths. Business people should walk that Switzerland line and never let anyone know your personal leanings, because just as you might have people who follow those and may go to you you're going to have just as many people who don't and will not go to you. The idea of a good business person is to encourage business. And I remember during the 2020 election, was it 2020? I can't remember. Yeah, I think it was 2020. The Trump signs were everywhere in front of businesses. Do you think we didn't keep a mental note of that?
Of course you did.
Do you think that we go to any of those businesses now? Of course not. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that don't. And if you want to, have at it. But guess what? They're losing a lot of business because of it, and they just don't care. But it makes me feel better. It makes me feel better.
I'll say two things on that. I'm okay if a business owner wants to open their mouth because it shows you who they truly are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. At least it's a beacon.
Yeah.
And it's funny because in the end, that what I just said was from a business person standpoint. But from my standpoint, I'm like, bring it on, because it just shows me who I'm not going to be going to. During the pandemic, we learned a lot about local restaurants. We learned a lot about local restaurant owners and their care for the community, and they're a lot. And we don't go to those restaurants. We don't patronize them. Here's
the important part of that, though. Businesses will care if they lose money.
Mm-hmm.
It's the people like you and I and others with our mindsets who have to make sure that we don't patronize them.
Right.
Because eventually we all forget. We all forget somebody's evil ways or something that they did, and you need a service, you go do it. Right.
Yep.
I'll tell you one that's really big right now. X. Twitter.
Yes.
Social media in this country affected this election very heavily. And there were many things that were done to promote one side or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be hard because every one of us uses it.
Yep.
Amazon.
Yep.
Tesla. Twitter. Facebook. All of that.
Yep.
All of it.
Yep.
And you're going to say, well, but I can order my Amazon whatever the hell I need, and it'll be here tomorrow. Do you need it tomorrow? Or can you afford to pay maybe a couple more dollars and buy it someplace else?
Right.
So it's not so easy to say, well, we're just not going to use them, because there are conveniences, there are monopolies, all sorts of stuff.
Right.
But in any way, shape, or form that you can make a difference for someone else, or a family, or an animal, or nature, I urge you to do that.
That's right.
Don't get caught up. Don't get caught up in the bullshit on social media. Find the stuff that brings you joy on social media and use it to help rejuvenate you. Don't use it to trigger yourself, or even from a political side of it showing you what you want to see. Because I think there's a lot of falsehood there too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you're going to use social media, which we all probably will,
right,
choose the stuff that makes the most sense for you personally and get rid of the rest. And that includes human beings in your life.
Exactly. My suggestion to you is to do what I've been doing. In your favorites, like you can do your favorite searches, find your top 10 pages that you'd like to go to. Don't scroll, at least for now. Do not scroll. Do not get yourself involved. If you belong to a certain group that is leaning very, very chaotic and very, very negative, unjoin it or unfollow it. Don't get notifications. Keep it light and keep it, like, for example, I belong to a group on Facebook called Buy Nothing, where you can trade with the people in your town, different items that you no longer need, but they might need. I love that group. That's on my favorites list. I go to that group all the time. I don't scroll. And if you do scroll, it's okay. Start learning to accept the fact that it's okay to unfriend or unfollow the people who make you feel bad or sad in any way.
I'm going to ask everybody to be strong.
Yes.
Don't just unfollow somebody on your Facebook. Fucking unfriend them.
I will say this, Todd. I think I told you before we started recording today. This week, I'm not kidding you. Probably 30 people have been gone. A lot of people on my friends list are people that I've never met and I don't know, who, for one reason or another, either when I was in radio, friend requested me, or they're friends of friends who friend requested me over the years, because I have, I think, about 3,000 friends on there. And I always say I'm going to weed people out, and then I never do. Well, this is the best reason I have to start weeding people out. And I will tell you, this week, probably 30 people have been gone, and I'm sure there's many more to come. Because I just don't have that bandwidth at this point in my life. I'm so sick of seeing the stupid memes that say, let's all just get along. We can agree to disagree. This is not about agree. This is not about who has the best, lasagna in town. This is not about, one thing or another. This is about very important things in our lives that are, including basic human rights, that are being compromised right now. And so don't feel bad about unfriending. I think I've unfollowed one person and unfriended 30 just since the election, and there's many more to come. Do not feel bad about it, especially if you don't know these people, if they don't interact with you and you've never met them. Don't feel bad. Do what you have to do for your own self-preservation.
Listen, I'm going a step further. Even if it's somebody you know.
Oh no, you're going a step further?
I am. Even if it's somebody I know and I kind of like. Yeah. If they spew any bullshit,
yes,
gone. And if they come back to me and say, well, you must have unfriended me. I did. Some of the stuff that you were posting, it's not.
I know.
That's what I'm going to say to people. And
yeah.
And you'd be surprised. There are some of you would think are the nicest, kindest people in the world. And they do wonderful things. And then they went and voted for him. And it's like,
right. I have no patience anymore, Todd. I have zero. I have none. I am the kind of person that tries to be kind and good-hearted and understanding, but even I have my limits. Dave, a couple months ago, a couple months ago, unfriended his cousin because he was a Trumpster and he couldn't take it anymore. Do not be afraid to unfriend people. It's social media, guys. It's social media. It's not real life. It's your feed. It's your Facebook page. It's your Instagram page. You have the right to not deal with that stuff.
And you have the right to do the same thing in real life to family members who don't align.
That's right.
It's okay.
That's right. My days of being that kind and that understanding are now gone. Gone.
I mean, I don't think Mr. Rogers would like us to say that, but
well,
I'm not Fred Rogers, and
right. Maybe we can paint some tiny little trees, but I don't even think that that's going to help us any. So now we don't have two of them in our corner anymore, but that's okay. I'm taking care of me now. Just like everybody else seems to want to do instead of anybody else, I'm taking care of me, my health, my wellness, my well-being. That's what I'm doing now. We'll get through it, but it's going to be a really rough one. Really rough one, guys. So we all got to stick together and do kind things.
I just saw something. I was scrolling and I saw this little report and I kind of laughed. It was obviously skewed toward me, but it was basically saying that Mr. Trump is up to find out if he is going to jail for some of his stuff, and that is November 26th. And it's for the state of New York. And that, according to what I saw here, that would supersede him becoming president. So here's the thing. I don't believe that necessarily, but
right.
I kind of giggled in the back of my mind going, God, that'd be so great.
I know.
That'd be so great.
I know. But, you know, I what did you say beforehand? You know, we all have this mindset in the way we live our lives. And I guess my biggest takeaway from this episode that we've just recorded is be true to who you are. Do not compromise who you are. Do not put up with people who do not have your best interest at heart. Because it's never a big deal until it happens to you.
And we actually said on the beforehand, and I'm the one who said it, because believe it or not, Sandy said, we won't talk politics, but I said, I said, fuck it. If you're a listener of our podcast and this angers you.
Yes, that's where I was going.
Bye.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit.
See
go.
Ya. No, go. Because we all have a right to feel the way we feel. And I'm at a point in my life where I have lived 54 years of my life, and I'm not putting up with bullshit. And I'm not putting up, and you know what? I was born a Catholic. I was raised a Catholic. I still believe in God. I still believe in a higher power. I don't necessarily follow the Catholic Church, but I do have a lot of religious leanings, and I cannot believe that there is a God who would damn people to hell for the human choices that they make about themselves and the people they love. And I do not believe that you would be damned to hell for that. Religion is being used as a tool for a lot of other things that aren't so good. Think about that. Religion is now being used as a tool. So I know we weren't going to talk politics, but you know what? Like you just said, Todd, if you don't like what we're saying, goodbye. Because that's who I am. And that's my anger. And that's my devastation coming through. Because you never know what's going to happen to you. And nothing's a big deal. Nothing affects you until it does. Right?
Yeah, I'm going to be like that that meme of Michael Jackson eating popcorn.
Yes.
Number one, I love popcorn. Yes. So I'll do that. And number two, Michael Jackson had some good music. And number three, he was a snappy dresser. And then that's right. Number four, let's just see how everything turns out. You know?
Yeah. I prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
All right. That is episode 6 of season
Welcome
13.
To our nightmare. And So we totally didn't talk about any of the stuff we were going to talk about,
right.
but I think that's fine.
Yep.
I think that's fine because this was actually really good for me to be able to get out all these feelings that I've been holding in all week, except for poor Dave, who's had to listen to it.
That poor man.
Although he agrees with me 100%.
Well, he
so
would have
he
to.
Just
He
says
doesn't.
it calmly.
He doesn't have a fucking choice.
No. I just go crazy, and then he just says the same thing that I feel and everything, but much more calmly than I do. So
Love that, man. Okay, well, wrapping it up. Have a good week. Again, be kind to to others.
Yes.
And choose.
Do the best you can.
Yep.
Do the best you can. We're always here for you. We're always here with
unless
our
you're
own...
dicks.
Huh?
I said unless you're dicks.
Unless you're a dick, then we're not here for you. And guess what? We're joining the movement. If you're if you're a dick, we don't care about you. We just don't.
All right.
I know. Happy Sunday.
Yep. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.